Hey, I'm Nathan, and this is the AW 2022 preview. Today I'm talking with Julio Gonzalez. Let's get started. Hey, Julio, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. So, my name's Julio.
Yeah.
To be here. I design various projects in XR, mostly in virtual reality. So, I've been working with organizations like the Autism Mixed Reality Institute, as well as Global Ties Idaho, looking at different ways to engage with communities. I was also a teacher at the University of Idaho recently, where I've been helping students explore the history and applications of XR theory. So, it's been really cool to see students engage with web-based meeting platforms.
You must have read my questions because you're already diving into the juicy stuff. How often would you say you're in the metaverse?
I would say I'm in the metaverse every day. It's a matter of just being connected to the internet. And so, whether that be teaching in a 3D space or even just being connected on Zoom, connecting with people. And so, it's really just about just, of course, there's new and interesting ways to do that, engaging with people across the world remotely.
I love that for you, the metaverse is about that connection and about that information that's empowered by digital tools. That's like simple and accessible. So, what's one big thing that you're hoping to share with the AWE audience when you give a presentation this year at all?
I'm a part of a panel that's looking at better inclusion practices when it comes to specific communities like the neurodiverse community as well as indigenous communities. So I think what that looks like is understanding that when it comes to the metaverse, accessibility is key when it comes to understanding and stepping into as a society into the metaverse. So the panel I'm part of, WE, focuses on neurodiversity and indigenous communities, using XR platforms and technologies to really promote and tell their own stories. So in summary, what that looks like is I feel like when we limit user experiences, we're taking a step back and we're taking a step away from the metaverse. And so ideally, it's really just about, again, getting more people able to access that and really understanding the principles of design that go into whether it be a platform limiting the amount of customization or the amount of people that can be in a space. It certainly feels like there's going to be a lot of open source use perhaps that opens up those limits.
Open source and interoperability are going to be things you're looking out for this year. What kind of topics or ideas are you excited to learn about or engage with at AWE this year?
I think first off, I'm excited to see who else is out there who understands kind of this value in accessibility in XR, but also really looking forward to see what other open source methods are being practiced throughout different developers and projects, just to kind of explore that and look at that value.
I love it. Kind of a curveball for you. Do you have a metaverse avatar?
I don't specifically have a metaverse avatar. I feel like I would certainly like to see something that could be used on various platforms, which I know we're starting to see that. I do have an alias that I use when it comes to using virtual networks that aren't necessarily career driven. So
Hmm.
it might be a gamer name, and it's a gamer name that my brother and I, well, we had gamer names when we were younger. So when we would play video games together, I'd always pick this name. And so I use that in some of my socials as well as on my Discord. And so in a way, that's kind of my virtual identity right now.
I love it. Those gamer tags and online personas really started with a username. That's a super cool point to bring up. Thank you. So our last question, and you've just breezed through this, so thank you so much, is the opportunity to give a shout out and maybe introduce us to somebody that you've learned from or who has impacted your path in XR.
So I certainly wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the many mentors and inspirational figures in immersive tech that have led me here. And so I would love to thank Kathleen Cohen, Rosario Casas, and Christopher Lafayette. Each are immersive tech leaders, and I think that their welcoming dedication and facilitation to diversity and inclusion is so important, and it's why I'm here today.
Oh my goodness, Julio, that was heartfelt and lovely. Thank you so much. Really excited to see you at AWE and your program within the education track. Julio Gonzalez, who is speaking with the Autism Mixed Reality Institute at AWE this year. Thank you so much for your time today at the 22 preview. We look forward to seeing you at AWE.
Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing everyone.
For the retail, e-commerce, and advertising track, we're talking with Ashley Crowder, CEO and co-founder of Ventana. They're presenting as part of Fashion's 3D journey from design to the metaverse. Let's get started. Ashley, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Let's just get started. Can you tell us about who you are and what you do in the metaverse?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ventana. We're a 3D commerce platform that makes it incredibly easy to go from design to sales and marketing. So it's a 3D content management system, upload designs, can instantly publish 3D and AR on e-commerce, social media, and game engines, aka the metaverse.
So, how often are you in the metaverse and what do you do?
I'm in there at least once a week, I'd say. I mean, it's all relative, right? So for me, my definition of the metaverse is it's the spatial internet, right? So we were going from this 2D plane to now we can actually have 3D models on e-commerce. You can have virtual spaces still just on my laptop or fully in headset. So, I'm in a headset probably once a week with my fun group, the XR Social Club. We meet in VR on Wednesday nights, which is really fun. But again, I'm working in 3D all day, every day. So
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's kind of funny how we have to sort of define our own version of the metaverse before we even have the rest of that conversation. You have a very compelling topic that you're bringing to AWE. We don't want to spoil that, but can you tell us maybe one big idea that you're hoping to share with the audience at AWE 22?
yeah, so at Ventana, we've worked with tons of fashion brands, Hugo Boss, Diesel, Deckers, VF Corp. And so I'll actually be speaking with one of our clients, VF Corp, about how they've really set up a scalable 3D workflow, which is so important. So, to do anything in the metaverse, you need digital twins, right? You need 3D models that meet certain specs so you can actually use them across various virtual worlds and platforms. And to date, a lot of people have done that in a very manual way, recreating 3D assets. Well, companies like VF Corp launch 100,000 products a year. Like there's no possible way to do this in a manual way. So you
Mhm.
have to set up things right the first time. So we're going to be going through, what are best practices to set up your 3D design and workflow to enable you to go from design to the metaverse quickly.
I can appreciate that so much. A lot of my work has been helping brands understand where the opportunities and cost in XR can be. And unless you're a brand that has thousands of digital assets or is really working in 3D and some other capability, I've often described how that pipeline can be one of the most challenging things to get right. I'm sure you'll have a packed audience. Is there anything that you're excited to learn about or experience for yourself in person at A22?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly one of my favorite conferences of the year. It's so great to just see, honestly, friends I've had in the space, have been working in the space for a decade, catch up on what they're building, from volumetric capture with something totally different we don't do to what are all the latest virtual worlds that people are building. There's the public ones like Decentraland and Somnium Space, but I think there's more and more companies cropping up building basically virtual storefronts for brands in the metaverse. I'm looking to connect with them because, we help do the 3D digital twins at scale, which can then populate those various stores. So, there's just so many different ways to find new partners at the conference.
Your website seems to suggest that interoperability of assets across platforms is really one of your strengths. Is that a message and a partnership opportunity that you're taking to the conference?
Yeah. So yeah, besides my talk with the F Corp, I'm also on a panel with the Kronos group. So we're contributors to Kronos and, big proponents of pushing GLB and standardization for the whole industry because it's going to make it easier for adoption across the board. And so at Ventana, we've spent years building our patented optimization software so we can take existing files, convert, fix, optimize them so they can actually be used across, Meta, Facebook, and Instagram with our latest integration, e-commerce websites, and various game engine platforms. Because until things are easy, we're not going to see the adoption that we want.
With these conversations, we try to discuss topics without a lot of jargon or fluff. Could you talk just a little bit about what does it mean for Ventana to have an integration with something like Meta and Oculus? What does that mean for somebody who's building a storefront or looking to use 3D assets in their workflows?
Yeah, so we were really excited about this integration, to have a 3D model on Facebook or Instagram, and has to meet certain specs. So it has to be under 6 MB in size, has to be under 100,000 polygons, a few other specific requirements. Well, most people's manufacturing design files are 200 MB or larger, or 1 million polygons. You can upload that to Ventana. We automatically optimize it, and then with this integration, we also automatically create a 3D AR ad unit. So your designer could upload the designs, your social media person can log on, publish a 3D AR ad, totally automated. So your social media person can now actually publish 3D and AR. You don't need to know anything about 3D or code anything. So
Did I just hear programmatic, structured for multiple uses, optimized 3D content at scale is what you're doing?
Yeah, we're trying to let people do 3D at scale, because that content creation process is really what has held back the whole industry, and we want to unlock that for people. And then can't wait to see all the amazing different virtual worlds they build with all the 3D content.
Yeah, you just gave me flashbacks to some of my past enterprise customers and like in roles in content strategy, right? One of the most complex, difficult parts is managing and accounting for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of like stacked SKUs and different like product associations. So being able to build that backbone and automation for 3D assets seems like amazing value for anybody pushing the dimensions of their content. Too much fun.
Yeah, we like to say we're the 3D plumbing. we make that piece easy at scale, and then you can do all these amazing things with it. So
Into the speed round, do you have a Metaverse avatar? And if so, what does it look like?
Yeah, I mean, personally, my favorite world to meet up in is VR chat. So in there, I've got like wild, crazy, fun avatars, like I've got like a cat that's like a rock punk like musician, and VR chat's just fun. It's wild and different. And I think that's what's really fun about the metaverse in general, is you can be anything. You don't need to look like yourself, right?
So our very last question is basically the opportunity to give a shout out or introduce us to somebody who's impacted your journey and understanding the metaverse.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I've talked about, XR Social Club. So shout out to Christina Heller, who started this group. She's the CEO of Metastage that does volumetric capture, but she started this years ago, and it was just a way for a lot of us to get together and test out these new platforms. We started, it was like years ago. So half the time things wouldn't work. One time I think in rec room, I could only walk backwards. Like, it was just hilarious. And we were, we were testing out, the latest and greatest stuff when it came out. And it was just a really fun way to do it. So.
Oh, that's super sweet. Thank you for sharing that. Is there any last notes or topics that we didn't get to?
For AWE, if you're excited to learn about fashion and how to build a scalable 3D workflow, I think my talk with VF Corp will be super interesting. And then if you are a developer and looking for standards, or even want to help contribute to standards, come to the talk with the Kronos team. We're always looking for people to join the organization and contribute, from startups all the way to, companies like Wayfair and NVIDIA are a part of it.
Thank you so much, Ashley. It's been fantastic having you. I can't wait to see you at AWE 2022.
Awesome.
For the enterprise track, today we're talking with Cynthia Maller of Walmart. She is the head of 3D creative technology, and she'll be talking at AWE about EQ for XR, helping creative and merchandising teams adopt 3D. So let's get started. Hey, Cynthia, welcome, and thanks for joining me.
Oh, it's so great to be here. It's the highlight of my day. It's, fun stuff.
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do in the metaverse?
Yeah, so I actually come from traditional background and, veteran of probably 100 plus TV commercials. And what I find relevant about that, which is always nice if your past is relevant, is that coming up through Hollywood, anything was possible. There was nothing that you could imagine that you couldn't show on film. So this was just the mindset that I had. So coming to Silicon Valley, working in digital, and then ultimately now working in 3D, I kind of already have the mindset of like, yeah, like the answer is never no, right? The answer is how do we do it? So I found that really helps me. And so now for Walmart, I work in the consumer facing piece. And I mentioned that because I have a lot of really talented colleagues using 3D for, like the employees. It's well known that associate training, we use VR, and those guys are amazing. So I do the consumer facing work, and we obviously start with models. That's a building block. And then we make beautiful scenes and beautiful videos for marketing and merch. And then those models get used for all the things that 3D models get used for.
I bet we could spend a whole episode just talking about 3D models and what you can do with all that content.
Yeah.
How often are you in the metaverse and what do you do there?
So I go fairly often. It's really funny. So I'm a figure skater, and I'd like to think that I have a high tolerance for dizziness. But I always warn people when you're first going in, you need to be aware that you might get really dizzy as you're moving around. I like to go, and I'm sort of a one of those interloper tourists. I tend to attend things, but I don't do a lot of socializing, which mirrors my real life. So I would really like to do more. I've got my headset right next to me, and it's always saying, "Hey, I haven't seen you in a while." So yeah, remember me.
Cynthia.
So as often as I can. And I think also it is important to remain a ignorant customer. In other words, like, well, this is fun, and pretend like I don't know anything. And it helps me remember this is how people are experiencing it. It's all new. They don't really care. Like I turn on the light switch. I don't know how it works. It doesn't matter. So it's like I just try to
Doesn't
remember, like,
matter.
don't worry about how this is all happening. Just enjoy it. Take the magic part to your heart and just experience it, right?
You don't ask how a light switch works. You don't need to know in order to get that benefit. You don't
Nope.
necessarily need to know everything about X in order to have a good time or a meaningful experience. That's cool.
Yeah.
So you've got a couple talks at AWE this year. We don't want to spoil anything, of course, but what's one big idea that you're hoping, or two, that you're hoping to share with your audience this year at A22?
Well, I am a big proponent of opening with love. And in this technical space, I like to bring people through with education, but from a place of love and compassion. Like, you're valuable. You don't have to be an engineer, okay? Like, you're going to have your own voice. Let's talk about what it is generally and get their mind going. But I really want to have compassion for people that they hear all this going on and they don't know what's going on. They're worried about being left behind. And yet the truth is that they can understand it. I actually, so the overall theme is just look, it's okay to be who you are. You do not have to start like at midnight going and trying to study code. I mean, this has been the truth all along. That's not who you are. Be who you are and bring your talent to the board. And there's a place for that. It just that we forget that when everyone's talking about something new and you're in a room going, I don't have anything to add, and it feels bad, like, okay, I'm part of the past and not the future. And that's painful emotionally. And I don't want people to go through that. I want to help them understand that
If the
they're
metaverse
really important. Yeah, go ahead.
if the metaverse is for all of us and has the opportunity to impact everyday life, we need everyday players just as much as we need builders and producers.
Yeah.
Thank you for making a space for people in the metaverse. That's such a fantastic position. Is there anything that you're excited to learn about or experience firsthand at the expo?
I'm really interested in learning about, there's a question out there, which is what is the general expectation about level of reality? Because in my travels, we focus a lot on that. And I'm actually not sure that it's necessary. I don't know. I So operationally, I think about this from a practical standpoint. Okay, like if it takes 12 hours to make a really beautiful 3D model, however, the 8-hour version is going to be just as compelling. I'd like to know that. So I want to kind of see where people's heads are at with what they're developing, because as you develop it, you have a requirement like level of fidelity, reality. And of course, gamers are at the leading edge of this. And you could talk to different gamers and what they expect to enhance the game is going to be different. But I'm really interested to know, what do we all think is what are we aiming for here? Are we overshooting?
I've heard a lot of topics, a lot of conversations around standards as it relates to interoperability, right? That we need standards because we want interoperable avatars. We want to be able to take these experiences with us. We want to control our own data. But what I'm hearing from you is a whole sort of another layer over and a different reason for that same kind of
Yeah.
structure and standards. So
Yeah, we're going to get into trouble. Let's say, so individual companies, one company may have a huge team and a large budget, and the next one doesn't have that, but we're expecting a standard. So what that does is put a lot of pressure on smaller teams. You know, if I were a really small team right now, I'd be like, okay, wait, can the standard be more like 5 rather than 10? Because I don't have the people and I don't have the release time. And
well, and
what do you expect? So the original Star Wars is still beautiful. It's funny in its lowbrow. It's about stories. I want to know from people, in order to feel like you want to engage more and wear your headset more and do more things, what is it that makes you feel comfortable there? It actually has implications for e-com too, in the normal web world too.
it seems like we could go deep on standards.
Yeah.
So, into the speed round, do you have a metaverse avatar? And if so, what does it look like?
I do. That's my Oculus one, which is the closest that I've come to it representing me. So yeah, my Roblox one is tragically far from me. But to my earlier point, I am comfortable representing me as me. So far, I don't really want to, be a furry, and I don't want to look like a fox. Right now, what I'm striving for, I notice my behavior. Oh, I want it to look like me. Okay, that's cool. That's my starting point. Some people are not there at all. Like, they'd rather be an elephant. I'd be like, cool. I don't want to do that yet.
I wonder, does what you use the metaverse for contribute to how you like to represent yourself in the metaverse?
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure that it does. I always want to pay attention to, I'm only a focus group of one, but I was giving a presentation internally. I give a lot of like, okay, let's just talk about, like, let's just calm down and talk about what it is, but calm down. And I talk a lot about, I show them, oh, here's my avatar for this thing and this thing, because it's about interoperability, right? Like traversing. But I talk like, we look different. And I realize as I'm saying it, well, why does that upset me? Like, so I look different wherever I go. Okay, but for me, I'm like, I think as I traverse, I want to still be me for now. But I recognize I'm going to encounter all kinds of other people that's not the case, and you can't make assumptions. It's
Yeah.
mind blowing.
I love it. You're potentially, Cynthia, and this is with all with love. I think you're one of the first people I've met that prefers a realistic avatar over a more abstract one. I myself, I love trying on different looks and filters and screen. That's a lot of why I got into the metaverse, was just like, ooh, let's try everything on. So it's super cool to meet this first perspective for me. Our last little segment is an opportunity to give a shout out or maybe introduce us to somebody who's impacted your learning and journey and understanding what the metaverse is. Is there anybody that contributed to your journey and growth?
I think there's two people. Tony Parisi is, I just admire him so much. And he's a great example of what I've been talking about. You know, he knows all of this in its complexity, but when he presents it, he does it simply. And that is so hard to do, because I know as he's talking, this guy, like inside his head is like so complicated, but he really is able to distill it down in a way where every time I talk to him, I feel like maybe I am smart. I don't know. I'm feeling smarter now. And then an hour later, I'm like, no, I'm just me. And then Amy Peck has also, what an amazing woman who advocates for actually all human beings, but really helps build a sisterhood. And there's a whole nother layer to why that's valuable. But those two people, for me, I don't think I would be here without them, because they really pulled me along, and they help me feel like I'm doing something valuable as well in that daily grind. So I love them both and don't see enough of either one of them. So.
Oh my goodness, that is so sweet. This is fast becoming my favorite question to ask.
Uh-oh.
Uh, so it's full of great insights and stories. Cynthia, is there anything else that we should make sure that we don't forget, or anything that you'd like to share with our audience ahead of Augmented World Expo 22?
One of my favorite books is called The Case Against Reality by Donald Hoffman. And he reminds us that we have for thousands of years already been living with representations of things that are not complete. They really are icons. He talks about this, right? Like when you walk outside, what you see is they're all icons of the thing. Like back in the day, you didn't need to see the entire lion. You just saw the face, but you're pretty sure there's a tail and claws and guts. So we have been trained from an evolutionary standpoint to just need a little bit of reality to go forward with the rest of our day. So I always remind myself of that. And we were talking about how real should things be. Well, already our brains are okay with a very little bit of information. Every day we make these decisions. Like I'm driving in traffic and I only see the grill of the Bentley coming at me. But I know there's probably a Kardashian in there, but I only need to see the front of the Bentley. I know there's a back. So if it's coming at me, I understand that this huge thing's coming at me. So the icons on our desktop, the things that we see online that we create, that when the power goes out, they might not last long. So we are already there mentally. We don't need to learn any new mental skills. We're prepared for it already. So I just love that, because it helps with, so I guess we already have the tools to ideate, to tell stories in the metaverse, because we have been living with just a little bit of real information forever.
Oh my gosh, what a fantastic place to leave it. Cynthia Maller, head of 3D creative technology at Walmart. So looking forward to seeing your programming at A22. And thank you so much for joining us for preview.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you as well.